Back live at the VeraSage Symposium. This is the last of our fellow DET talks for this morning. And then we'll be taking lunch, not directly after this. There is going to be, I should say this, we have a surprise insertion into the DET talks. A surprise insertion into the DET talks after Greg Kyte, but we'll talk more about that after he finishes. Greg, I've laughed before I even said your name, so I don't know what that, but Greg is we have designations, as you might know, for fellows at VeraSage. One is practicing fellow, and this indicates that this is someone who is in current practice, but who adheres to all of the VeraSage principles, meaning they always fixed price, always a 100% money back guarantee, and they do not do timesheets. And then as well as being asked by Ron to be a fellow. That's the other qualification. So if you want to know like the process, that's the process. But we then designate them, so we have the practicing fellow, and then we also have what are called senior fellows, and these are folks like myself and John who are no longer in current practice. Well, then there's this guy who has his own special separate designation from a fellow perspective. He doesn't fit into either of those categories. So we made one up, and he is known as affectionately as the G. Robert Newhart non-value added fellow. G. Robert Newhart is the long name for someone that you may all know. His name is Bob Newhart, the comedian, the United States comedian, who, before he went into stand-up comedy, was in fact a CPA. So there's the full tie-in. So without any more blathering, let me bring up the G. Robert Newhart non-value added fellow, Mr. Greg Kyte.
Thank you so much. Another way to say all that, G. Robert Newhart, non-value added. People are like, well, why are you here? How did you get here? And I was like, I'm not in a firm. I'm a controller for a group of medical office buildings. I don't belong here. The reason I am here is because I made Ron Baker laugh once, and here I am. So, but today I'm really excited to talk to you about this concept that I've got. It's about playing at work, because I love to play, and I found I think what I'm finding here. This is a work in progress. This is something that I'm excited to get your feedback on, to see if this is all just bullshit or if it's actually something that's worth it. But I think by using this, there's three things that you're going to find. You're going to find that it's a way to it's a not so obvious way to delight your customers, your team, and yourself. Another way to say that is it's a way to create value for everyone. And I love what Ron said earlier when he says value is not a number, it's a feeling. That's something that's going to stick with me, not just because it's powerful, but also it's probably the only thing Ron said so far today that I haven't heard him say before. So what I've done is I've identified three different types of play. The first one is playing as in when you go to play a sport. And one of the things that I think you can do, I'm convinced that you can do to create value in your firm, in whatever business that you have, is to retool your business so that it functions more like a sports team. And here's some of the components, some of the requirements that are there to retool a company to be more like a sport. The first component is you have to have clear goals, and probably what you're saying is no crap, I have to have clear goals. That's just good management. Well, you're damn right it's good management, but nobody does good management. You're probably wrong, and basically that's just to say, if you think you have clear goals, you're probably wrong. Okay? You have to set clear goals for how do you win? How do you win as a company? How does your staff win? What do you really want from them? This goes back to my own personal story, my own journey to VeraSage. I worked at a CPA firm for 1 year, and I got chewed up and spit out, largely because the bizarre incentives that are created in a time billing structure that's there. And the thing was they kept telling me, hey, we want you to serve our customers wonderfully, but then they'd haul me into the back room and kick me in the kidneys because I wasn't meeting my chargeable hour goals for the year, even though I was providing some fantastic customer service. I did not understand how I was supposed to win. Some other interesting things about the clear goals is to create clear goals, you have to put in constraints. Think about the game of soccer, or as people who don't speak English say, football. In that, there's constraints that are simply part of the game. Because if you think of it, somebody one day said, hey, I got an idea. How about we don't use our hands? And that's a constraint that creates the game. So constraints are part of it. Don't go do whatever you need to do. Tell your people exactly how you're constraining them to create, to score points at your firm. The other thing that's interesting, sorry, I'm in puberty right now. The other thing that's interesting is that you're going to have different levels. Like for instance, there's some sports, like again, back to volleyball. You've got a position in volleyball that's a setter, and that person, he's not scoring points directly. His job is to be the second person to hit the ball to set up the person who's the striker. Okay, do you get that? And so you've got to show people that even if you're not the one ringing the cash register at my business, here's very specifically how you fit into the process, and here's exactly what I want you to do. And if you ever spike the ball, you're doing your job wrong. Do you see what I'm saying? You got to set all that stuff up. One of the things I talked to Sean earlier, you said that you have within your firm, you've set up a very clear goal with all of your people in terms of how they score points. And I'm almost halfway done with my time. I got to keep going. Next one, coaching. You've got to be able to tell your people how they can suck less at what they do. Because one of the things with changing your business to be a sport is that you're going to be increasing engagement within your firm. But if they suck at their sport, they're going to stop being engaged. We all witnessed that last night, where after the first quarter, the wily Pirates were no longer engaged in the football game because they were getting spanked over and over and over again. You got to tell people how they can win and give them a clear path, or else they're going to disengage. And the last one, this is important with the three different types of play that I show. There must be public competition. Have any of you ever participated in a CrossFit workout? Raise your hand if you've ever done a CrossFit workout. Okay, it's accountants, yeah, so there's not very many. But here's what they do. The one time I went to a CrossFit workout, you were supposed to do so many exercises, and once you were done with the entire workout, you went up and you wrote your name on the whiteboard. And the whole idea is that created a public competition where everyone was trying to see where they ranked in terms of the other people playing the game. At your firm, it's not a sport. You haven't transformed your company into a sport unless there's some sort of public competition. And you might say, wait a second, that's going to make some of my staff feel crappy about themselves. Go back to number 2. Some of them should feel crappy, but it's your job to tell them how to stop feeling crappy and how to start winning. Do you see what I'm saying there? So that's the first type of play, is sport. Second type of play is artistic play, as in you're playing a musical instrument. Okay, how can you create that sort of artistic play within your firm? Well, again, there's some components. The first thing is you've got to practice. You've got to be able to perfect the existing techniques for whatever that is. And this is any type of art, whether that's musical art, whether that's the fine arts like painting or drawing or anything like that. You've got to perfect the basics. Okay, it's pretty simple. But one other thing is, as you're practicing, as you're perfecting the basics, you've got to say no to so many other things. There's nobody who's a world-class cellist who also is doing a million other things. They've limited their life to become amazing and to perfect the basics at that. You've got there was Bo Jackson, who was baseball and football. He was a weirdo, and he probably would have gone further in his athletic career if he just focused on one of the sports, okay? Michael Jordan was an amazing basketball player, horrible baseball player. Stick to what you know. Next, and this is so important, you've got to produce. Cover bands don't change the world. I stole that from Todd Henry is the guy's name. He's a podcaster and an author. Whatever you do, if you're an artist, it's not good enough to just have amazing technique. The other component that's required for you to produce something new is authenticity. That's where artists thrive. That's where artists become something amazing, is when they're able to imbue whatever they do with authenticity. And I don't care if you're talking, again, about a painter, about a musician, or even a stand-up comedian. Those people are successful and they're amazing because they're giving something that's uniquely them to their customers and to the world. You've got to figure out a way inside your company to be able to show that authenticity out to the world. The next one, again, you've got to be able to perform your art publicly, whether that's an art display or a concert or whatever that means, whatever analogy works best for you, or it's just shipping your art. You created a specific art piece for a specific person and you send it to them. That's a type of performance. Has anyone seen the movie Mystery Men? It's a spoof superhero movie. There's one of the superheroes in there is called Invisible Boy, and they said, "Tell us about your power." And he says, "Well, I can turn invisible, but only when no one's watching, not even myself." Okay? You don't have a superpower unless people can see it. So you got to show it. It's very, very important for an artist to be able to show their work. The third type of play, I call it pure play, and this is the hardest one for me to really nail down. It's when you're playing for the sake of play. You're having fun at work. This is incredibly important to me, and you'd be hard-pressed to find a business that says we're not interested in people having fun at work. First off, the first component of pure play, it's risky. It takes courage. Did you guys see earlier today when I stood up and pretended like I had an Australian accent, and it was the worst pretend Australian accent that you'd ever heard? I was nervous getting up to do that because A, I didn't know if you would all judge me, and B, I didn't know if I'd alienate half of the people in the room who would just hate me for mocking their country and their culture. It took courage. It takes courage to play at work, period. The second thing, it takes creativity. There's a thing, I've done improv comedy, I've done it for years. One of the things we talk about there is finding the game within the game. Again, what I saw after I screwed around and did this fake accent, then Bill Sheraton calls me out by saying it's nice to be here with a bunch of smart people and Greg, which was awesome. And then John gets up with his nice Australian accent and says, "Hi, I'm John from Provo, Utah." What you saw right there was an example this morning of finding a game within a game. You've got to if you want people to really play at your firm, you've got to be able to give them the freedom to play, but then you've also have to help encourage them to say, "Hey, what are some fun things that are that are authentic games that happen here within our firm?" The last thing here is subversiveness. And there's a story about this. When I was in youth group, a church youth group in high school, we had church youth group games all the time, and our motto for church youth group games was if it's worth winning, it's worth cheating for. What we would do is we would listen to the rules of the game, and then we'd spend the whole rest of the time trying to figure out what the loopholes were to the rules of the game to win the game, and it was the best. So anyways, this, and I hope you humor me with this a little bit. Why play? This is the biggest thing. Why do you want to play any of these things? And the reason why is engagement. Now, you could go back and you could say, okay, there's tons of reasons to do this. It's gonna foster innovation. That's absolutely true. It's gonna foster creativity. Absolutely true. It's going to help me implement change. Absolutely true. It's going to help me with my bottom line. Absolutely true. It's going to build a loyal customer base. Absolutely true. But I don't care. I don't give a rat's ass, honestly, about any of that stuff. The thing that's important to me about playing at work is engagement, is pure, simple engagement. And it gets back to the existential crisis of life. If you talk about work as a sport, I would rather spend my life trying to beat the clock that is my death, that's coming at me like a freight train that I can't escape. I'd rather be trying to beat the clock than just running out the clock. Do you see what I'm saying? And everyone feels that in one way or another. There's a book that I read that changed my life. This may be an overshare, but I don't care. A lot of you guys are close friends. You know this. I got divorced in the last year, and I spent 2 years of just painful marriage counseling with this guy who was supposed to be an amazing marriage counselor and did not do it. And with the thousands of dollars that I spent to this guy to try to save my marriage, the biggest thing that he sent me away with was he recommended a book that I thought was awesome. And that book was called Existential Psychotherapy. I know, the worst name. I hear it myself. It sounds like the worst book ever. It was the best book ever. And it's by this really creepy looking guy named Irvin Yalom, but it changed. This book is amazing, and it gets to some of the real roots of what life is all about. And he says meaninglessness. We all fight the battle of trying to find meaning in our work. You do it, your staff does it, your customers do it. And what he says is meaninglessness is intricately interwoven with leisure and with disengagement. What that means, the converse of that, is if you're engaged at work, you're finding meaning. If you're engaged, and what I just was able to show you is 3 very tangible ways to get engaged. When you're playing a sport, you're freaking engaged. When you're on stage performing art, you're engaged. When you're fucking around, you're engaged. Okay, I am. Another thing, meaning, like pleasure, must be pursued obliquely. A sense of meaningfulness is a byproduct of engagement. And then this last quote that I'm gonna leave on is this: wholehearted engagement in any of the infinite array of life's activities not only disarms meaninglessness, but enhances the possibility of one's completing the patterning of events of one's life in some coherent fashion. What he means is when you're engaged in life, you're able to create a story that's interesting, okay? If you are a patent attorney, I don't want to know you or talk to you or spend any time with you ever, okay? If you are a patent attorney, are you a patent attorney? Okay. If you're a patent attorney who's figured out how to change being a patent attorney into a sport where you're engaged in it and you go, this is how I am able to suck the marrow out of being a patent attorney, I want to spend all day with you. If you've become an artistic patent attorney where you're able to, where people like, look at this guy. I mean, it sounds ridiculous. I know, I understand. The challenge is on you to make a patent attorney an art form. But what I'm saying, if you can do it, I want to know about it, and I will buy you a drink to hear about it. If you're a patent attorney who and I've done this because part of my job, I work with legal documents, even though I'm not a lawyer. When you send me a legal document in Word, I am going to change something in it, and I'll make sure it does not show up on the red line edition where there's a swear in it. The word shit will be in the document somewhere, and it's up to you to find it. It's kind of like an Easter egg hunt, and nobody ever finds the Easter egg, okay? It's exactly like that. If you do that kind of stuff at work, I totally want to be your friend and do that, because what you've just done by doing that is you are, what does he say? Completing the patterns and the events of your life into a coherent, and I'd say not just coherent, but into an interesting way, to a story that you are proud of. So I totally ran the clock, and I'm sorry, but thank you for letting me present that.